And we're live, and with me I have, my guest Lapis, and we're going to be discussing Joe Biden. Let me just get screen share right quick.
Sure. So, thank you very much for having me on here again, Ren. It's a great pleasure to be a reoccurring guest on your channel. So, last week we sort of briefly touched on this idea, but I think none of you got the pleasure of hearing it about how Joe Biden's and DHS floated an idea to shield illegal immigrants who rat out employers.
Yeah, I think we got half of it done, but I would rather just the best way to refresh people's memories is to just do the whole thing all in one lump. And not only that, but it's a really short article. It's really short. So it won't take long to get
Mhm.
through it.
Yeah. Would you
Did you?
like which
Oh,
would you like me to start reading, or do you want to read?
oh, you could be the one to read.
All right. The Biden administration is mulling a proposal to shield undocumented immigrants from deportation if they dime out an employer who hires them for quote unquote exploitative rates, according to a report. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas included the idea in a note to Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Tay Johnson on Tuesday, targeting employers who hire undocumented immigrants rather than undocumented immigrants themselves, the Wall Street Journal reported. The memo calls on Johnson and other immigration officials to come up with a policy option in 60 days to carry out the initiative. Mayorkas says the DHS can cut the demand for hiring undocumented immigrants by pursuing unscrupulous employers who take advantage of the undocumented workers by paying them low wages, the report said.
Yeah, I mean, dealing with the employers that take advantage of the undocumented immigrants, I think that's a good way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. Because if you target the undocumented immigrants, what oftentimes ends up happening is that that's just a threat that the employer can use against them. Like, oh, you better not complain about anything, or I'll get you deported. And then they can just find new immigrants to replace the ones they get deported.
Yeah, I mean, and it would just be an ongoing cycle. It would just be an ongoing cycle because, it's kind of like those sort of people who normally advocate for open borders, but open borders is just a form of, um, it's a form of slavery, the slave trade. It's the modern day slave trade.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these labor conditions, it is really like human trafficking any under any other kind of name.
Yeah, I just view it as the modern day slave trade. Like how they have the what's it, pro wheelchair bench, but it's really a anti homeless bench. But it's like, no, no,
Yeah,
no, it's not anti homeless. It is pro wheelchair, or it's kind of like this is a gay pride bench, but it has like rails on it to prevent homeless people from sleeping on it. And so it's kind of like they would like to be like, we are woke, we are tolerant, we want open borders, but you pay undocumented immigrants 10 cents.
yeah. I think that really a lot of these conversations are really just people redefining terms because when you look at some cases of political correctness, it really is about not protecting any sort of minority, but more so hiding an ugly reality.
Exactly. That is exactly what's going on. Exactly. Like, it's not really about protecting minorities. You hit the nail on the head. It's like, it's kind of like, can you repeat that again?
Sure. Political correctness isn't about protecting minorities, it's about hiding ugly realities.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's kind of like what they really want is, to bring back the slave trade, but instead of saying like, "Hey, we want, undocumented immigrants," and let's face it, they're normally Hispanic. They're normally
Yeah.
like not white people. They're not, going to do this to a Canadian, but it's
Hmm.
kind of like, undocumented immigrants. It's just the slave trade all over again because you're paying them 10 cents and they're going to be working in horrific conditions. And then it's like, if they even think about complaining about the conditions, it's like, well, if you complain, we'll deport you.
Yeah. And and that's really why I think this decision by the DHS is such a good idea. I mean, this seems like they're just floating the proposal, not that they've gone with it already, but I hope they do because it is actually a good idea because you're cutting off the problem at the source and you're holding the people accountable who really need to be held accountable, the ones profiting off of human misery.
Yeah, the businessmen, they need to be held accountable. But I mean, it's just a proposal. It has to been passed into law yet.
Well, it says they're floating a proposal.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but if it's possible, I mean, we could kind of talk to your. I mean, unfortunately, you live. Well, no, not going to say that. Um, I don't know who's watching and what their reps are, but maybe they could contact their reps about this proposal and see if there's anyone who has more of a platform than us, who can kind of put pressure on the Biden administration to enact this proposal, because having good ideas is one thing, actually implementing them is another.
Yeah, that's definitely the truth. Do you want to read this section too?
Sure. The DHS secretary said the hiring of undocumented migrants leads to an unfair labor market because people authorized to work will have a more difficult time finding jobs that pay decent
Amen to
wages.
that. Amen to that. Amen to
Yeah.
that. Like I've gone through that. I have definitely gone through that. So let's see. Hiring got at least to unfair labor market because people authorized to work will have a more difficult time finding just to pay decent. Yeah, it's kind of like when I did security. I quit security, but it paid only like dollars, $9.50 per hour, and then it's kind of like you're working from sun up to sundown. Like, sure, there is supposed to be, a first shift, a second shift, or a third shift. But it's like if, your relief doesn't show up on time, then it's kind of a lot like, it's kind of like how my relief, quit the job and I ended up working like, 15 hours, and it's like, so I was like literally working from sun up to sundown. My
Hmm.
legs were aching and in pain, and it's like all for 950. It's like that 950 ain't worth it. It's barely above minimum wage around here. I mean, it's like I'm not gonna give any hints to where I live because there are, certain people, like the ones we had to deal with. Well, what the one
Certain
me in
dark
the
trench
morning.
coats.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's like, so I would rather just keep my privacy. I mean, I have no problem with showing my face because I'm not that big, but still, I mean, it's like I'm glad that he has no idea where I live, and I would like to keep it that way. But 950, I mean, I don't want to give away with minimum wage just around here but it's just like a little bit over minimum wage. I'll put it at just a little bit over.
mhm.
Uh,
And, I actually do agree with the argument that if you just allow, employers to exploit undocumented people without checking in or doing anything, that really does create a two-tier system. Because in this employer's mind, what are they going to do? Are they going to have to hire someone who they have to offer like benefits to, oversight from federal government agencies that would protect these workers? And all this sort of thing. Of course, not that these government agencies actually protect these workers, but they're supposed to. So companies are worried about, okay, if I make my factory to make profit, you want to increase profits and limit costs. If you can pay someone 10 cents instead of 9.50 an hour, what calculation are you going to make?
you're gonna go with the undocumented immigrants because they're cheaper. Because I think you said that it's somewhat similar in Canada, where you know
Yeah. And that was actually done by a conservative government. So it's funny, the conservatives were complaining about immigration all the time. Migrants, migrants, migrants. That's all they would say when election time came around. But as soon as they got their big government majorities, guess what they did? They passed this law that meant that temporary workers could come to Canada and be paid like I think like less than half of our minimum wage. Um, and to work in the fields like legally, and then they would just go back to Palestine or Malaysia or the Philippines, um, and none of those jobs would actually stay in the communities. So I actually had a really big problem with that, because not only is it bad for the workers who have to come over, it's also bad for people here. So it's a lose-lose system,
yeah,
except for the big corporations who are the
yeah,
only winners.
yeah, exactly. Because in one hand, it's a two-tier system. Like it's kind of like the immigrants get paid, like $10 an hour, and an actual Canadian would get paid like $15 per hour. However, it's kind of like if you could pay one person $10 per hour and another person $15 per hour, you would focus on the $10 per hour because that would mean you'll save money. Like, I mean, if I was a businessman and I had to pick and choose, like, well, this person is $10 per hour, this citizen is $15 per hour, it would make more sense, to spend money on the undocumented immigrant because that's more money in your pockets. But then Canadians will be losing job, and then losing job will be a conservative talking point because Tucker Carlson and Paul Joseph Lawson, like, you are losing your jobs. But it's kind of a lot like, make sure that they get paid the exact same as the citizen.
Yeah. Um, so I completely agree with that, because like the thing with Tucker Carlson and a lot of the conservative populist right people like him, they talk about the right issues sometimes, but they come to the wrong conclusions. You know, Tucker Carlson hears a story like this and he thinks, well, the immigrants are the problem. Or that's what he'll write in his book. I don't know what he actually, believes in his heart of hearts. But, you know, when people say things like that, you have to realize that I really doubt that the undocumented immigrants really enjoy making 10 cents an hour. Like,
Actually, Tucker Carlson has went after corporations. He has went after Walmart. He actually has someone after like Walmart and Amazon.
yeah, the thing that with Tucker Carlson, and it's actually kind of an interesting thing with the populist right, they target certain kinds of corporations, but not other kinds of corporations. Like, I don't think I've really heard Tucker Carlson go after big oil or coal companies or things like that. Um, And that's because the sorts of people who fund Fox News belong to a more, weirdly enough, kind of conservative segment of the business industry that is more interested in anti progressive policies, especially around the environment and regulation. What Tucker Carlson likes to criticize is what I call the liberal side of capital, like Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, those sorts of corporations. Oftentimes they're based in places like New York or California. And they represent the side of wealth that's like the banks or like tech conglomerates. Um, or the culture industry. Like things like that is where you'll find Tucker Carlson criticizing him or them because they're not funding him.
Yeah, they both sides do that, criticize who's not funding them
Oh
because
yeah,
then
that's all.
because then
That's
it would be
yeah. That
because then it
also
would be a
applies to Washington
conflict of
D.C.
interest.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, anyway, should we continue?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and read?
The messages exploitative employers should be aware. Marcus told the Journal. He said businesses that employ undocumented immigrants, but pay them a fair wage and offer a safe working conditions won't be a priority for enforcement, which I think is a very good thing. Do you have an input on this? Are you there?
Absolutely.
Are you
Yeah, I'm
there?
there. I just was muting myself because I was responding to chat.
Oh. Marcus said the initiative stems from a directive he issued on September 3rd, ordering ICE to focus on deporting undocumented immigrants who pose a threat to national security, public safety, and border security because the government doesn't have the resources to track down every person who enters the U.S. unlawfully. The new direction reflects policies followed by the Clinton and Obama administration, but moves beyond them in protecting the workers from deportation, the report said. Under President Bill Clinton, agencies wouldn't try to deport undocumented immigrants if they lodged a labor complaint. That's a great idea when you think about it, though. If they lodge labor complaints, you wouldn't deport them. That's actually a really great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. But President Barack Obama ended the immigration raids on workplaces and prioritized enforcement on employers violating immigration laws, which I think is a wonderful idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, punish them. Don't punish the immigrants. Punish them.
Yeah. But look who went in the opposite direction. Interestingly enough, Donald Trump ratcheted up workplace investigations, including an ICE raid in August 2019 on a Mississippi chicken plant that led to the arrest of about 680 immigrants, a third of whom were deported. Like, that sort of thing will become like a big news story, but it doesn't actually substantially address the problem. Like, the third that got deported can easily be replaced by new undocumented immigrants.
Exactly. Do you want to read this?
Sure. ICE began 4 more workplace investigations in 2019 than the last year of the Obama administration, the report said, citing government data, but noted that the number of employers arrested for hiring undocumented immigrants fell each year of the Trump administration.
Well, wait a minute, let's see. But noted that the number of employers arrested for hiring immigrants fell each year. Yeah, see, this is why I think that Biden is an improvement. The reason why I think Biden is an improvement over Trump is because the number of employers arrested for hiring undocumented immigrants fell each year. But that's the roots of the problem. That's the roots of the problem because it's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like a do thing that the left and the right have more. Never mind. Never mind. I probably shouldn't went that direction. But it's like, it's like the employers, they once, undocumented immigrants so that they could exploit them. They don't want to open borders out of the goodness of their hearts. They want open borders because it's the modern day slave trade. They just want to basically legalize slavery.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like it makes more sense. So, I mean, this is where I had to criticize Trump. The number of employees arrested for hiring undocumented immigrants each year on a Trump, they are the ones that should get arrested. They're the ones that should be punished because then we could end the slave trade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like starting with those sorts of policies is the right sort of maneuver. So here it says critics have blasted the Biden administration for its lax immigration policies that have led to a record surge of undocumented immigrants arriving at the border. Several undocumented immigrants who illegally crossed into Wama, Arizona, spoke this week with Daily Caller field reporter Jorge Ventura. Daily Caller, isn't that the one that Ben Shapiro works for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then he hired Candace Owens, and it's like, I do not trust Candace Owens, as far as I could draw her, she is the last person that I draw. Like, okay, Lynn, you know what Shannon I'm talking about. Lynn since had
Yeah.
posted something about where Candace Owens says something like no black person has ever been abused by the police ever. And it's like I cannot believe she said that. Like there's even okay, like let me tell you, there was even a black male conservative who's like, look, I'm a conservative too. Like, come on. Like he was also a black conservative, but he's like, come on, like that's too much, like even for him. Like even he was like, I can't believe this. There are some black conservatives who look at Candace Owens as like, I cannot believe you.
Mm-hmm.
But she has been disavowed by like, I think my name is Josephine. It's a black conservative just like, no, not Candace Owens. And I've seen some other people who are black conservatives who are like, no, because it's like she goes like, I mean, she just goes too far to the even point where people are black conservatives like, oh, come now.
Yeah. And I mean, like, to believe that no black person has ever been mistreated by the police ever. Like, George Floyd was last year. That was taped. Everyone saw that happening.
And Candace Owens, I mean, in a way, I think she's in a way is using neoliberal talking points anyway, because okay, like neoliberals love to tell a tale, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like when you look at, the civil rights era, you just focus on making these people sound picture perfect and like the evil Klan and the beautiful and wonderful, people in favor of civil rights. And that is what she's like taking, but using it to defend right wingers. It's kind of like, well, he raped people, he did this, he was a drug addict, he did this, and because it's kind of like that's pretty much neoliberal what neoliberals do. They make, if they support a group, they erase all of your flaws and go, this group is perfect and anything targeting you is evil. When really, the KKK is still bad, even if they know how to be polite and charming. Like Lauren Southern knows how to be polite, charming, charismatic. She could be really likable, but no matter how likable and friendly she could be, she is still a bad person. If you get what I mean.
I completely get what you mean. Like, there is such a different thing, and I think you hit the nail on the head there when you're talking about how, in a way, Candace Owens is neoliberal. It's that she really, and if you look at her history, she very much used to be a liberal. Like, she created that whole weird ass website back around Gamergate, where it was like, oh, the children can post on this website, but they'll have to use their public names so they can be held accountable if they say anything problematic. Um, and people on the left and on the right criticized her. Candace Owens goes underground. Then in 2016, 2017, Candace Owens resurfaces, and now she's this red-pilled black conservative who, instead of really having a conservatism that is like authentic, that is actually sort of focused on improving the lives of black people, it's more along the lines of pretending that black people have no problems,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like I don't believe her because it's like I could believe that people make some changes. I could believe that people make some changes over time, but I don't believe that a person could go 180 in like all of their views in a short time span. Because to make changes, it's going to be a really slow, really gradual, really slow moving. It's not going to be like overnight.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be because people are rude to you over the internet. I mean, it's going to be like really slow, really gradual, really like it's going to be slow moving. So it should be like it would make more sense if she moved to the center left or if she moved to the center right. But she just goes like it's Blair White made a video that was really interesting. Blair White made a really interesting video where she talked about how there were people who are really rich. You know, they were like born in it with a silver spoon in their mouths, and then they try to do like other things. They try to get into acting, or they try to, be for the left or whatnot, or acting, and then they become conservative commentators because it's easy money. Like they were born with a silver spoon in their mouths, so their father, their very wealthy father would make sure that they would have a job. Their father would like, hey, we're going to make sure you have a job where get the good money.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really say what they mean. They just go into conservative commentator because it's easy money for them.
Yeah, and it's very profitable to be someone like Dave Rubin. Like, like if all you have to do is say, "I agree with that" to some right-leaning personality of the day, your video will get hundreds of thousands of views, and then you can tweet some nonsense on your Twitter account, and your Patreon will fill up with money. And I just like it's very obvious, and I think that is why the grifting conservatives are probably doing a bit better than the old like far right that used to exist up until around Charlottesville when they really started to get deplatformed, is because they know how to couch their language better in civility, in this fake politeness that people respond to.
Yeah. I mean it. Yeah, I mean, what Blair White said is interesting. Like she even says that most conservatives that you watch on YouTube are grifters. They just say it for the money. Like she even outed Steven Crowler. Like Steven Crowler, just says what he says for money, and that he actually has like a transgender cousin that he loves very much. But everything he just says for easy money.
Yeah, you can really like it's so over the top with Steven Crowder. Like it feels like a bit of a parody of what conservatives are like. Um, and there's just like this, especially from Dave Rubin. I get such inauthentic vibes from him whenever I look at his face, whenever he talks. I'm like, if I could see lies, I think I would be able to see everything that comes out of your mouth.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Where did we? Who asked them if they found it easier to cross now that Biden is in office? First of all, he doesn't separate families. One Colombian migrant said, according to a translator. Second, one can wait less. When before it was 6 months, now it goes by faster. So it's under asylum. A second Colombian migrant told Ventura that he is obviously happy Biden changed some of Trump's immigration policies because it gives a chance for new people to grow, study, um, be somebody in life because that's what we're looking for. Ventura pressed the migrants further, asking why they didn't want to cross the U.S. during the last administration. No, I didn't even want to try it, one other migrant said, citing strict immigration policies and a please not to even think about it. But I mean, I don't really think that I don't know. Biden is a godsend, mainly because remember the Haitians, like what's it, the Haitians, and
Yeah,
were
I
like men
that
on
seems
horseback.
like propaganda, because especially because it's from the Daily Caller, you know. Um, I remember exactly what you're talking about. That images of ICE on like on horseback, like whipping the Haitian migrants, like or hitting them with batons. I don't see how you could have that happen to anyone and be like, wow, what lax immigration policy at the border.
Let's see. I'm looking at the second article, making sure that it's not too long because you said that you only have 30 minutes left.
Yeah, but I can extend it a little if necessary. It's just I prefer if we went a bit quicker tonight.
Yeah, I think that this should be I think that this should be quick.
Okay.
Yeah, like I did scan over it to make sure that it wasn't too long. Like see, like look at how long it is. That's just the comments. And not only that, but it's a large font, it's large size font, so it
Yeah,
should
it's not that
be
bad.
pretty quick. And I double check. I don't know what type of company Newsweek, but when it comes to Business Insider, they like to hide everything under paywalls, and it's like, look, I don't feel like I don't feel like going through your paywalls. If you, I'm just gonna go with whatever outlets it's in hiding behind a paywall.
I completely I think that journalists who are relying on paywalls have got to start to understand that they are actually shooting themselves in the foot in regards to their prospective audience. I think it's something to do with ad block. They think that they'll make more money if they rely on paywalls, but I don't know. What you really end up doing is making sure that only people who want to waste their money want to read your stories.
And I ain't gonna spend that money because, like, we talk about wage theft and we talk about how little Americans make, but then they want to act like we have an unlimited amount of money. Like we make really little and they don't want to give us more money. But then it's kind of like they want to act like we have an abundance of wealth. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
look, until I get more money, I'm not going to go through these paywalls.
Yeah, I don't mind having if you want to do something like pay a little bit of money to remove ads. I feel like some people would do that. But if you're just going to have paywalls that prevent people from looking at your articles, no, that really honestly makes me not want to read anything from your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like it's one thing to say, give us $1 and we'll remove all the ads. But it's another thing to say, give us $1 if you want to read, our articles. Like with Business Insider and the New York Times, there's a limited amounts of articles you could read. Because sometimes I can read Business Insider, but it seems like I could only read about I don't know, I guess about 5 articles during a month. And then I had to wait until the next month to read 5 more articles. Like, look, I'm not gonna do all that. I'm not gonna spend money on you.
Yeah, just sort of a waste. All right. So, House Democrats just passed President Biden's multi-trillion-dollar Build Back Better spending agenda. They're pitching it as a historic investment in the middle and working class. So, why is its second largest provision a tax cut for the rich? That's right. The latest version of the Build Back Better plan includes $125 billion for healthcare subsidies and $130 billion to expand the child tax credit. Yet it allocates only $280 billion to fund tax relief for wealthy residents of blue states. The only item bigger than this tax relief for the rich is funding for pre-K and childcare, which comes to $390 billion. At question is something called the State and Local Tax Deduction, or SALT for short. It essentially gives residents of high tax, read blue, states a discount on their fair share of federal taxes. The GOP limited the deduction as a part of its 2017 tax reform, and now the Democrats are trying to expand it again via Build Back Better.
And I double checked. I mean, I wrote it from Business Insider first, but Business Insider would only allow you to read so much for free. And then the next thing you know, it's like you go to Business Insider again, and then it's like you had to pay. Like you could only read so much, but according to Business Insider, it's Nancy Pelosi's idea. Yeah, it was, Nancy
Ugh.
Pelosi's idea. She's behind it.
Nancy Pelosi and what was that one that used to be in charge of the Senate? Mitch McConnell. Those are some of the most crooked politicians in America. Like they're so corrupt. And it honestly seems that who's ever in charge, Democrat or Republican, the one consistent thing is that the rich are winning.
Yeah, it should. It's absolutely true because the giving tax cuts for the rich, that was actually all Nancy Pelosi's idea. Business Insider was calling out her specifically. Hey, Nancy Pelosi, why did you decide this? So basically, they gave Nancy Pelosi all of the blame for it. The Democrats are attempting to spin this as middle class tax relief, which is BS. But
Yeah.
it is actually almost exclusively benefits the rich, and which is why I have lost some respect from Nick Hayer, because Nick Hayer, he seems to care about the working class and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I guess he's just another crooked guy. As the Washington Post explained, over the next 5 years, raising the SALT cap would provide a tax cuts only to those who itemize their taxes and pay more than $10,000 in states and local taxes, a group overwhelmingly made up of the wealthy. According to liberally leaning Tax Policy Center, Americans in the bottom 40% of income earners receive literally zero benefits from this change, while almost all the benefits accrue to those earning more than 250,000 annually.
Can you imagine making that much annually?
Yeah.
250,000.
Yeah. Well, it does include some new taxes on the wealthy. The Build Back Better plan actually constitutes a net tax cut to the rich, which is why, again, I am disappointed for Nick Hayer supporting Build Back Better, because it just benefits the rich. I guess I should have known, because in his book Gardens of Variety, he wanted a sugar tax. But think about it this way: who wants sugar the most? Little kids, because little kids are heavily targeted. Like, think about Halloween.
Yeah.
Think about Halloween and trick or treating. What are kids trick or treating for? Kids want chocolate,
Yeah.
and Reese's Cups. It's kind of like the older you get, you can't even really touch it anyway. You'll get, high blood pressure. And for me, like, I've lowered my blood pressure, and my blood pressure has been normal for about a year. But it's kind of like the older you get, the more you're like have to worry about high blood pressure. When it comes to sugar, it's little kids that want that, because little kids are heavily targeted in Halloween. Not only that, but okay, in my high school, they had soda machines, like high school, junior high school. They had, soda machines everywhere. And only that, but even when I was in the first grade, they would give us really sugary juices.
Yeah, if you really wanted to do something about that, instead of a sugar tax, why not subsidize healthy food, do something about food deserts, and get rid of all those sugary drinks in schools, because that just teaches children early on to be consumers of things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of having a sugar tax, which, I mean, of course, it's going to affect the working class the most, because they get little kids addicted to it. What would make more sense is to remove the vending machines. Okay, either one, remove all of those vending machines from schools. Two, have the vending machines, have like water and sugar-free tea and whatnot. I highly doubt they'll do it though, because they know that sugar is addictive, but they target you while you're young, you know.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I think I heard something about, maybe I'll find this news story for our next show next week. But I remember hearing, distinctly remember hearing something about companies partnering with schools in order to advertise their products inside the school. And those were, some of them were soft drink companies and that sort of thing.
Can you repeat that?
I heard something about companies like soft drink companies getting into partnerships with schools where they'd give them a bit of funding if they let them set up soft drink machines and advertisements inside the schools.
Yeah, yeah, because there were like Coca-Cola machines all around my high school, even junior high school. There was like Coca-Cola machines everywhere. But even then, even when I was, in the first grade, they would give us like all of these little fruit juices and Capri Sun. When you are a kid, you are heavily targeted with sugar. Because kids are who they target, because then you're addicted, then you beg your parents for it. And, parents don't want to tell their kids no.
Yeah.
And anybody who's listened to the Democratic rhetoric in recent years knows that this is beyond hypocritical. We're debating about whether to give lower and middle class families $8,000 more a year through the child tax credit, while giving upper class families 10,000 more through SALT. Um, uh, that's a counter to everything the Democrats have been saying Build Back Better is about, and everything they said is about the Trump tax cuts.
Mm-hmm. It honestly seems, and I know I was saying this earlier, but with the Trump tax cuts, they cut a bunch of important programs for poor and middle income families, and they lowered taxes a lot on the wealthy, to the extent where some of the lowest paid people in America actually pay more taxes percentage of their income than multimillionaires and billionaires. But now Biden's, trying to make it seems like this bill makes poorer people pay more tax, where at the same time making it easier for the rich. So it seems like with the Republicans, you get services you need slashed and the rich get tax cuts. And the Democrats, the poor pay more taxes and the rich get tax cuts.
Yeah, that was also a problem with the Obama era. The problem with the Obama era is that if you didn't have health insurance, then you owed the government money. But the thing is, pretty much all wealthy people would easily have health insurance. You're telling people who don't have the money to afford health insurance, you need to have health insurance, or you had to pay the government money. So basically, the basically it was it's type poor,
Yeah.
like when, okay, yeah, it was mandatory that we had health insurance, but poor people couldn't afford health insurance. So basically, and owing the government money for not having health insurance is so weird. Like, why do you owe the government money? That doesn't make any sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, the Obama administration was anti-poor, and it's kind of, you're saying that now you're saying that um poor people are paying more into taxes in the new Build Back Better plan.
Yeah, I don't. Seems iffy to me, son. All right. Yeah, what makes this Democrat hypocrisy so sinister is that, as written, the plan currently cuts taxes for the rich while burdening millions of working and middle class Americans with new taxes. President Biden repeatedly promised not to raise taxes on anyone earning less than 400,000.
Yeah, he did.
But the Build Back Better plan nonetheless includes billions in new taxes, such as increased taxes on nicotine products, hitting smokers, a group that's disproportionately poor and racially diverse. Build Back Better will ultimately result in 20 to 30% of middle-class households seeing a tax increase, according to the Tax Policy Center. There's simply no escaping the fact that the Democrats' Build Back Better plan cuts taxes on the rich, burdening working Americans with new taxes, and betrays all their promises. But what makes matters worse is their openly cynical motivation for this betrayal. The Democrats are apparently okay with tax cuts for the rich when it's rich constituents from their home state.
Oh,
Ugh.
okay. This is why I feel like, this is what I feel like the real reason, like how, Beyonce and Jay-Z and all these
Mhm.
celebrities will be like, I am Alyssa Millennial and I vote for Hillary Clinton and I am Beyonce. It's because it's kind of like WikiLeaks would, when it comes to WikiLeaks, it mentions how, Hillary Clinton. I'm not sure that it's not really talking about really Hillary Clinton, but how Democrats work is that they say one thing for the voters, but it is
Mhm.
say another thing. It's like rich people, they're two-faced. Like they'll go on TV and be like, I care about the poor. Basically, they use working class rhetoric. They use more working class rhetoric, like, I care about the poor, I care about the working class, I care about you. But then behind closed doors, they're like, hey, we're gonna make things easier for you if you're rich.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like because think about it this way. I don't Celebrities are typically really rich. They are worth billions. I don't think that rich people are actually going to go against their best interests. I don't think that rich people are unironically are going to go like, yeah, I want to pay higher taxes.
Mhm.
I do
I
think
mean, they
that.
can do that at any time. They just have to alter their tax code. Like, it's not that difficult.
If they wanted to pay higher taxes, they could simply just stop using all those tax deductibles and stop having offshore bank accounts. Like, it's not that difficult. But they don't. What they want is to be praised by their fans for supporting causes that their poor fans agree with, while at the same time making sure with their Democratic friends in Congress and the Senate, but you're not actually going to make life more expensive for me, right? Oh, you're going to make it better for me. Okay, good. Yeah, I support Biden. Build back better. Build back better.
Better. It's like, you make it, you say one thing. Somebody made this, you've heard of polycom balls, and it's kind of like, you see like, a Democrat, but with a leftist mask, like, like a lib left mask, or, similar to, like you know what a political compass meme is. It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but it's kind of like, okay, there's Politicom ball, and it's kind of like somebody had a comic where it's kind of like a Democrat, but they have like much more of a left-leaning mass where it's like working class and we care and whatnot. And then it's kind of a lot like, a conservative would have a libertarian mask. It's like, but with their libertarians were like, lower taxes. But in the end, it's like they don't really care. Like the one they can both agree on is to screw over the working class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like the bipartisan consensus that will get Washington working again.
Where did we leave off?
We left off when it's okay for tax cuts for the rich when it's constituents from their home states. The SALT tax relief overwhelmingly flows to residents of blue states where taxes tend to be higher. Democratic legislatures are compromising their purported principles in pursuit of political patronage and corrupt clientelism.
Yeah, they care about their richness. Like, where says I don't support these rich celebrities. Okay, this is the last few paragraphs.
Yeah.
And if we could finish it all, we'll be finished before you have to go.
Okay, would you like to read?
No, you can read.
All right. You don't have to take it from a fiscal conservative like me. No less a progressive than Senator Bernie Sanders has said that including SALT tax relief in Build Back Better sends a terrible message. You can't be on the side of the wealthy and powerful if you're going to really fight for working families, Sanders said. And in exchange for this supposedly historic investment, we'll get lower employment and less economic growth, according to an analysis by Wharton School of Business. What a great deal for taxpayers. President Biden and his Democratic allies claim their multi-trillion-dollar spending agenda is about revitalizing the working class. But a closer look into the details of the plan they just passed reveals that it screws over working-class taxpayers while funneling corrupt tax carve-outs to rich Democratic constituents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Ugh. Dreadful.
Yes. Yeah, exactly, exactly. They don't really want to help the working class. They just wear a mask. It's like they would, say one thing to you if like you are poor, but then they would go and they would say behind closed doors like another set of promises if you're rich. Like I, rich celebrities are not going to go against their best interest. They're not going to go and be a lot like, they're not going to screw themselves over and really pay higher taxes. They love taking advantage of tax loopholes themselves. Like I think Alyssa Milano got in huge trouble because she didn't pay any of her taxes.
Well, now she'll get to pay even less tax because of the new SALT thing the Democrats just passed.
Yes, celebrities and Democrats love to take advantage of people's trust and like you could trust us. I mean, like like Democratic politicians, like the anti-homeless benches. No, it's not an anti-homeless bench. It's a pride bench, or it's not an anti-homeless bench. It is a pro wheelchair bench. No, this is not a slave trade. We want open borders. We want open borders because we care. But it's like then it's like paying people $10 per hour, and then when it's time to face accountability, file for bankruptcy, close the store, change all the numbers.
And then the process will start all over again while the people you exploited get hauled off by ICE.
Yeah, it's really terrible and it's really unfortunate, and they're screwing over the work. But the thing is, I mean, it's kind of like AOC's message. I remember she had this old commercial a long time ago. It's just like they do not send their kids to our schools. They do not drink our waters, and she has the points. How could you really trust a person who doesn't have a personal investment into helping you? A person who basically keeps themselves sealed away from you.
Yeah. Like, what sort of message does it send to be like, oh yeah, I support the working class from your giant mansion in San Francisco?
Yes, exactly. It's like these politicians, they're not going to send students to, send their kids into like a public school. They're not going to do that. Though if they did, like if a politician did send their kids to a public school, I do think we would see lots of necessary improvements. But they're like, no, I'm not going to send my kid into that school. I'm going to send my kids to an elite private school. But then you have no real motive to, give kids better books and whatnot.
I just thought it might be an interesting idea is if politicians were required by law to use Medicare and send their children to public schools. I really think you'd see a lot of change.
Yeah, this is I proposed that exact same idea to Social Equalizer. I said to Social Equalizer, we're not going to see any real improvements unless it was mandatory for politicians to send their kids to public schools, because you are in charge. You are in charge. You should make sure that we have better books. But there was this one politician years back, and they refused to give their schools better books. So the schools were like still using books from, I don't know, the 1960s or whatnot. And the books were like falling apart, and they wanted to like use taxpayer money to go gambling or something like that.
Ugh.
But think about this, think about how many politicians get caught gambling with taxpayer money.
Yeah. And if not gambling, then there's some sort of like insider trading going on. Like, hey, just so you know, we're going to pass regulation on this company that's a competitor of yours. So you might want to sell all of your shares in that company and then invest in this one. Like, there's a lot of that going on.
But I do think that, I mean, I do believe that sooner or later it would backfire because I do think, like the news article we just said, they're hurting the economy because the wealth is heavily concentrated to the wealth, but and it's keeping, pretty much everybody else poor, which reminds me like of hearing about the fall of, I'm not sure if it was the Roman Empire or the Holy Roman Empire, but I think it's the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, where wealthy people wanted to have slaves and they kept
that
all
would
the
be the
wealth.
Roman Empire.
Huh?
Slavery was illegal by the time of the Holy Roman Empire.
So it's the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And they just had all of these slaves, and they didn't, and people became mercenaries for money. So people would actually go to become mercenaries and fight another country's war just to have money
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. And people think that slavery was parts of the fall.
No, I absolutely do think slavery was part of the fall of the Roman Empire. And not just slavery, but also like income inequality. How like there was a very few group of really wealthy people, like mostly like rich senators and other types around the emperor, and then there was a huge group of slaves, and a bunch of people who didn't really speak Latin, fighting wars far, far away from Rome. The parallels to America are pretty striking.
Yeah. I heard about it from Sargon of Akkad. Sargon brought up the parallels between the Roman Empire and America, and it's like, and when I read about it, it's like, wow, it does remind me of America, and I still believe that sooner or later America is going to split. The reason why is because the heavy concentration of wealth. It's not like, it's not like you have like a bunch of people with their own homes. You have so many people struggling to get by. Too many people are living paycheck after paycheck.
Yeah. So what happens from there? I
And
guess.
I do think that, yeah, because so many Americans are living paycheck after paycheck, and because the wealth is heavily concentrated to the wealthy, I do think it would eventually cause the United States to split off, because, and I don't know what the wealthy are going to do if, like, because it's kind of like if the United States were to split, then it's kind of like, like obviously people would want something to benefit, their own little area. But the problem would always be rich people selling themselves out, and it hurts other people, and the people that it hurts always want to split, because they're not benefiting.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what America will turn into in the coming years. I don't know where this decline is headed, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be reversed unless very soon someone does something about this inequality of wealth and the corruption in politics.
Yeah, I think that the biggest problem is wealth inequality. And it's why I don't get why people are celebrating robots, because the way I view it, robots would just create a situation like the enemy psychopaths, where the robots will be used to monitor us. The robots are not going to be, it's not going to be like fun. Like the robots are going to be our friends or our allies. We're not going to be good friends. And, it's probably going to be much more like psychopaths, where the robots are policing us, and it's like, sure, we may see a decline of the regular police, but for more robots, sure, a robot can't do everything a human could do. A human could always do more than a robot, but it's kind of like how there would be surveillance dogs. Sean had covered this, where Sean had covered surveillance dogs,
Yeah,
keeping an
those
eye.
reminded me a lot of a book I read called Fahrenheit 451. Because those also used like metal police dogs. And that was a book written way back in 1951. And it's like, okay, complementing a regular police force will be these metal dogs who don't have any sort of feelings and who completely obey the way of the still, have no hesitation. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And we had all of those propaganda videos with like, look at how cute the robot dog is. The robot dog wants to be your friend.
Yeah,
No.
and it's a surveillance dog. It's a robot surveillance dog, and it's keeping an eye on you. It's keeping a watch on you. And people are like, oh, it's so cute. And I had to agree with Surehead. No, it's surveillance. It's watching you. It's keeping an eye on you. It's like what my communist friend said. Well, a communist associate said, it's like it leads to a society of control, because she told me about a communist there, or he. I forget if it was she. I think it's he actually, but he told me about a society of control.
Yeah, and maybe that's a topic for another video. Unfortunately, I have to go now, but I had a lot of fun on call with you. I always do, Rin. You're a great host, and you always find really interesting topics.
And I am glad to have you as a regular, because I do believe we have a good rapport going on. I really do think we have a great back and forth going on, and I do believe that we cover really important issues. Unfortunately, covering important issues doesn't get a lot of attention.
Yeah, it's a shame. Interesting choice by the YouTube algorithms. Anyway, let's talk next week if you can, and I'll see you all then.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.